Best plays, best value, best results. 9 to 5 sports. You know you gotta love that intro, but let's get into it. We got the receiver rankings 15 through 21, and now this is where it really starts to get real. It's kind of easier to gauge, receivers 1 through 14. That's not fun. You kind of just gotta do it and get it over with. But this is where you make your money. This is where the picks and plays and rankings start to add up and start to make a difference. Let's get right into it. So this is kind of going to be the rankings that we're going to be looking at. And once again, as always, if you guys disagree or agree, let me know in the comment section below. Willing to talk about it, 9 to 5 Nation, or that group that just likes to talk about it and, discuss it. Make it best for everyone involved in 9 to 5 Nation. Make the best things possible. Make it work. All right, let's get started out here with Robert Woods. Now, Robert Woods, you look at him and they got Brandon Cooks, they got Cooper Kupp, and you're like, how can someone like Robert Woods continue to dominate? Well, he does, and he does check that box of continue to get better each and every year. That's what we like to look for. And with Robert Woods, he had the 10th most fantasy points this year, averaging 13.9 per game, which is actually great. He finished as the 10th receiver overall, and he only had 3 sits this year. And what I consider a sit is when you score under 9.5 fantasy points in a half-point PPR league. So he only had 3 sits, which is great. He had the 13th most targets with an average of 8.2 this year. So obviously, he should be able to do that again. We do worry about the targets there with Cooper Kupp and Brandon Cooks, but still, he's gotten better each year. That's what we like to see. Now we got Adam Thielen here. I'm not sure why that says Brandon Cooks. I apologize. Didn't get that updated, but Adam Thielen here. He finished as receiver number 7, averaged 15.7 points per game, and he also has gotten better each year. In 2016, he finished with 10 points on average per game. Then 2017, 12.1. Then last year, 15.7 fantasy points per game on average. He had the 6th most targets with 9.6. And actually, he only had 3 games under 7 targets per game, which is something that we really like to see. And the whole year, he only had 2 of those sits per game, which is just great. We really do like that. So now let's get into it. We got, I don't know what is going on. So Tyler Lockett here, I'm not sure why it's saying T.Y. Hilton there. Gotta update that. So this is Tyler Lockett here. He finished as receiver number 15 last year. He had 4 games under 9.5 fantasy points per game. With Doug Baldwin gone, though, there's going to be 73 available targets. And, with Tyler Lockett, it's kind of weird. So in his career, last year he had 71 targets. 2017, he had about the same. 2016, he had 69. 2015, 66. So with Doug Baldwin finally gone, I think that we can assume that Tyler Lockett's targets are going to go up by at least 20, maybe 30, and he should be a lock to be a top 20 receiver again. I really do see that happening again, so I really do like Tyler Lockett this year. The next one we're going to touch on is going to be Sammy Watkins here. So Sammy Watkins is an interesting case because with Tyreek gone, there's 137 targets total available. And if we want to look at true average, which is something I kind of came up with, it's games that a player has played when they're healthy, because that's really all that matters is how can they help me when they're healthy. And he averaged 10.4 fantasy points per game in his true average. And his true average targets per game was 5.8. But the key thing that we want to look at here with Sammy Watkins is what he did when Tyreek Hill was kind of injured. And we can look at the playoffs there. He had 16 targets, 10 receptions, and 176 yards. I think the Chiefs will change their offense and reflect it over into Sammy Watkins being the number 1 receiver and the number 1 weapon, and I really like him. Jarvis Landry, he just always produces 7th most fantasy points last year. He was a beast. He was just 24 yards shy of 1,000 yards receiving. He had 6 TDs. He had the 18th most fantasy points per game. But what I want to look at is he just always does good each year. In the last 4 years, he's averaged 194 fantasy points per year. So if that was last year, he would have been the 14th overall fantasy football receiver. So I think if Baker Mayfield gets better this year, which everyone hopes, right now, Baker Mayfield's still developing. He still needs to hit some targets to Jarvis Landry, not Odell Beckham. I do still think that Jarvis Landry can easily be a top 20 receiver like he has averaged his whole career. Mike Williams and the next receiver, they're kind of tied in together. I'll tell you the other receiver. It's going to be Chris Godwin. They're kind of the same, but let's break it down with Mike Williams. So Tyrell Williams is gone. That opens up 64 targets. Williams only had 66 targets last year, so I think we can give him a boost of at least 20 there. So that's something that we like to see. He did have 10 touchdowns. He was a touchdown machine, but he only had 5 starts last year, which is kind of crazy. So he was kind of their number 3 receiver. So I think he's going to step into that number 2 receiver. And the one thing I like about Mike Williams is that when Keenan Allen was hurt, Mike Williams averaged 12.5 fantasy points per game. That's including some playoff games, but I do really like that. So now getting to Chris Godwin. So now with Deshaun Jackson gone, there's 74 targets available to Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin actually had a lot of targets. He had 95 targets last year, and if we can give him like 10 or 20 more, which is kind of a lot, but you know, the average receiver 10 through 20 that finishes receiver 10 through 20 has about 100 or so targets. And so if we can give that to Chris Godwin, I think it's safe to assume that he's going to continue to be a good receiving weapon. He's going to finish inside that top 20. So I really like Chris Godwin as an option this year as well. So that is the list that we have here. Let me know what you guys think. Put it in the comment section below. But that's all I got for you guys in this video. All right, that's all we got for you guys. Please give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.